Welcome to our World News Update for February 28th, 2025. It's been a while since we released a World News Update, and for good reason. Simply because things are happening so fast these days. It's hard to keep up with something before it's outdated from something new happening. However, lately I'm seeing many things leading to what has potential to turn into a very dangerous situation for believers. One I'm concerned many aren't seeing. I want to present some things from a perspective you may not have considered before. And this has nothing to do with all the unrest that continues to increase around the world on multiple fronts. Like how more and more specialists are sending warnings of a soon-coming market crash, the war in Russia, and many others. Though we know it's been around for a long time, anti-Semitism seems to be growing at an alarming rate and getting covered in the media just the same. From marches and riots in the streets to protests at universities, it's growing. On October 7th of 2023, it was just the opposite. It seemed the majority of the world had sympathy for the modern state of Israel. However, as the modern state of Israel began its retaliation, that sympathy slowly faded. And now, nearing a year and a half later, that sympathy has backlashed into an all-out hatred by many. Let it be known, we oppose anti-Semitism. While arguments can be made from both sides as to what transpired on October 7th and the days that followed, differences need to be taken up with the respected authorities and not civilians outside of the situation. To counter anti-Semitism in America, Donald Trump sent the following message out before his inauguration. When I begin my second term as president, I will sign into law a bill criminalizing anti-Semitism on the federal level all across America. Anti-Semites will have no place to hide once I sign this bill, and we will prosecute them to the full extent of the law. Once in office, he fulfilled that promise. He signed an executive order to directly oppose anti-Semitism. Executive Order 141-88 on January 29, 2025. While we're definitely in favor of such an action, we do have concern with how part of it reads. Section 2 reads, Policy. It shall be the policy of the United States to combat anti-Semitism vigorously, using all available and appropriate legal tools to prosecute, remove, or otherwise hold to account the perpetrators of unlawful anti-Semitic harassment and violence. On the surface, this sounds great. It really does. The concern comes when the interpretation to harassment and violence gets brought up. What can be deemed as harassment and violence? While it should be obvious, what's obvious to one may not be obvious to others. You see, the Sanhedrin in Israel is determined to make the Noahide laws universal and to have them enforced on all mankind. Now, you may be thinking that sounds silly. However, it's not silly to them. In fact, as reported this last month from Israeli 365 News, the Sanhedrin published an open letter to President Trump calling for him to establish an international divine courts for all nations. You heard that right. In the letter, we read, Your recognition of the importance of religion in public life is a step toward restoring moral values and spiritual leadership in the world. A little farther down, it reads, Enclosed with this letter, we have included the Universal Ethical Common Code, which outlines the benefits of adopting the 7 Commandments of Noah, which is also known as the Noahide laws. They then conclude the letter with, You have been elected, as Cyrus was in his time, to fulfill a heavenly mission, to unite all believers in God and foster ethical cooperation across all spheres of human activity. A call to establish an international divine court. We invite you to meet with the Sanhedrin court rabbis in Jerusalem to discuss the establishment of an international divine court for all nations. This court would be based on the 7 universal commandments given to Noah and reaffirmed at Mount Sinai as foundation for global peace and divine justice. So, there you have it. The Sanhedrin from the modern state of Israel is doing all they can to establish an international divine court with the Noahide laws as the governing rule. We have a teaching on this very topic titled, Beware of the Noahide Laws. It's a teaching you need to check out. Consider what we find in the Talmud under the section titled Sanhedrin from Sepharia.org regarding the name of Yahweh. Anyone who curses his God shall bear his sin. Leviticus 24:15. That the verse could have stated, one who curses his God. Why must the verse state anyone? It is to include the Gentiles, who are prohibited from blessing, i.e., cursing, the name of God, just like Jews are, and they are executed for this transgression by the sword alone, as all death penalties stated with regard to the descendants of Noah are by the sword alone. Sanhedrin 56a, 14. Also from the Talmud, under the same section titled Sanhedrin, regarding the Sabbath. A Gentile who observed Shabbat is liable to receive the death penalty, as it is stated, and day and night shall not cease. Genesis 8:23, which literally means, and day and night they shall not rest. This is interpreted homiletically to mean that the descendants of Noah may not take a day of rest. And the Master said that their prohibition is their death penalty, i.e., the punishment for any prohibition with regard to descendants of Noah is execution. Sanhedrin 58b, 25 through 59b, 12. This brings us back to the harassment and violence, as mentioned earlier. You see, one who speaks the name of Yahweh or observes the Sabbath is doing violence to their law. They say the Torah is only for the Jews, and so you would be doing violence to their law. But may we never forget what is given to us in Leviticus 24. Leviticus 24, verse 22. You are to have the same law for the alien and the native born. I am Yahweh, your God. There aren't 2 laws, one for the Jew and one for the Gentile. No, Yahweh has one law for all to pursue. Thus, the prophets declare, Isaiah chapter 2, verse 3, many peoples, that being Gentiles, will come and say, Come, let us go up to the mountain of Yahweh, to the house of the God of Jacob. He will teach us his ways, so that we may walk in his paths. The law will go out from Zion, the word of Yahweh from Jerusalem. And let's not forget how the Sanhedrin is trying to reestablish the sacrificial system again. Consider what was said on this very subject at the U.S. government gathering on the prayer movement just a few weeks ago when Netanyahu and other representatives were in the States.
What we have to talk about is this red heifer. That's why you have a book here. The very first step to move towards the red heifer, there has to be a spiritual movement that's going to happen within Israel. And it's on its way right now. We have the red heifers in Israel, and we believe, if it's the Lord's will, that we will see the ceremony of the red heifer happen probably this spring. Okay? That will be the first.
It's evident they're doing all they can to get the sacrificial system started again. And it'll all start with the red heifer sacrifice. Please see our teaching on that topic if you haven't. But they're talking this spring. The hopes are to get everything ready for Passover. If that happens, prophecy may start unfolding much faster than we think. If it does indeed come to pass, we'll be seeing the Noahide laws come into effect not long after, ushering in what we see in Revelation: persecution on those who obey God's commandments and hold to the testimony of Yeshua, as seen here in Revelation 12:17 and 14:12. Christian persecution has always been around, but it seems to be something working its way back into the norm all around the world. In fact, as reported at genocidewatch.com, 2 weeks ago now, on February 13th, 2025, militants rounded up 70 Christians in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. They took them to a church and then killed all 70 of them. The militants are suspected to be members of the Allied Democratic Forces, a rebel group with ties to the Islamic State group. It was also reported all 70 captives were taken to a Protestant church in Kasanga, where they were killed inside with machetes or hammers. The sad part is, this wasn't even covered by any of the mainstream news media. Why? More than likely, because it doesn't promote their agenda. In closing, I want to cover at least one other item, that being AI. A close friend of mine who works with different companies regarding security systems contacted me last week with some rather disturbing information. He said, in just the last 6 months, AI is making things far more difficult in the security world. AI voice and video advancement is growing at an exponential rate, so much so that now even video chats can't be trusted anymore. The security company shared how an employee from one of their clients was about to send money to pay an account because his boss had just told him to do so through a video call. However, just before paying that account, he saw his boss just minutes later in the room next to him. Thinking it was odd to see his boss so quickly from the other side of the building, just after talking to him, he walked over to his boss to confirm the request on the account. His boss looked at him and had no idea what he was talking about. What happened? AI took his boss's profile with pictures and audio taps from his phone or video uploads and completely recreated his boss in a real-time conversation to transfer funds. Ladies and gentlemen, where does it end? What do we trust now? Who do we trust now? I don't know, but this is very concerning to say the least. As always, we don't know the future, but we know the one who does. So, let's make it a point to pray as we walk through our everyday routines. Make more time to read. Let's make it a point to invest more time into our relationship with our Heavenly Father like never before. That way, regardless of what lies ahead, we know we're in good company. Keep your hearts humble in Him as we all learn and grow together in His Word. Blessings and shalom.